Our next speaker is Saurabh Mishra, and Saurabh is managing partner at Farmantra. Saurabh, would you like to turn on your camera and start sharing? Fantastic. Saurabh, you're based in Spain, so you have from an outside looking in perspective at this region. And Saurabh, take it away. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter. Thanks, American Valley Alliance, for inviting me to talk about value creation in life sciences. So, and thanks to all the audience who are here. I have 15 minutes to talk about the value creation. So I hope I will be able to do justice because life sciences is not just one biotech, medtech, there are several other companies, right? So before I start this discussion, right, about the value creation, I'd like to start with this question. Should you maximize value or value per share? Okay. Now, I wish I were here physically and I would have asked you, each one of you, that would have given me different perspective. But unfortunately, I don't have that particular chance to do that. So let me give you the answer first, and then we will go by the explanation. Assuming that you are not going by, or you are not becoming the next Theranos, meaning if you are doing everything legally and ethically, right? The objective of your company should be to maximize value per share. You know why? Because you could have two companies exactly with the same market cap, 100 million and 100 million, but your value per share could be very different, or price per share could be very different. Think about it. Imagine you are an early stage investor, okay, and you invested at the very beginning in company A with €1 per share, company B €1 per share. Today, company A is trading at €20 per share, company B is trading at €45 per share. Okay, it makes a lot of difference. In fact, it's very funny that I was reading one of the biotech CEOs comment, and it talked about that market cap is the share of the CEO's ego, okay? Whereas with the share price, you fund your kids' education. Actually, it's pretty true. Why don't we take a look at some real case studies, right, to kind of explain this particular point, okay? If you could see here, I have taken this example from Atlas Ventures, one of the VC fund in New York, based in New York. So we have these two companies, interesting companies, Kite Pharma, that was acquired by Gilead, and Juno Therapeutics, right? That was acquired by Celgene long ago. If we see let's see the evolution of these two companies, okay? Kite Pharma started with a 15 million convertible note, right? And it had certain discount, and then they raised 20 million in Series A, okay? And they had another 50 million before IPO. So as a private company, they raised around $85 million, okay, as a private company. Now think about Juno Therapeutics. They started very big. You know, they raised around 180 million, okay, from the beginning. Then they had 134. So as a private company, Juno raised around 314 million. Now, if you compare the share price at which they were acquired, okay, and you could compare the returns, although both are great examples, nevertheless, you will see that Kite had excellent returns, 114 times if you're an early investor, and Juno 22 times. Of course, 22 times also is excellent, right? But what the point of this particular example is to understand whether maximizing value or value per share matters, okay? Now, you could also argue that maybe what if the investor might have invested in, let's say, mezzanine funding or in between something. You could do any mathematics, anything, you will find that the returns of Kite Pharma is very high. Now, the next question is, how do you then maximize value per share, right? In order to do that, I'll take you to the next concept, okay? It's a return on the invested capital. That simply implies that how much capital you invest, okay, that gives you the highest return. So that means how efficient you are in capital allocation, okay? It simply implies capital efficiency as well, okay? Now let's think intuitively. Imagine you are a biotech company and you raised $20 20 million, for example, because you need 20 million to move to the next stage. And you have another company who has, let's say, raised 150 million. Let's say both companies are very similar in all respects. You'll find that the company with 20 million has the higher chance of providing, let's say, 20x, 30x, or 40x return in comparison to the company who has raised 200 million. It's first of all, it's simple math, but let's forget math or intuition. Let's get to the data, okay? If you see this particular data, you'll find that the more capital you invest, okay, right, 100 million, 150 million, it doesn't correlate with very high return. In fact, superior returns tend to correlate with capital efficiency, right? That means, so your objective is not to make the largest or the longest train. What you want to have a train that stops at the next station with the minimum amount of fuel. That's capital efficiency, right? So now the next question is that how can I attain that capital efficiency? How much capital should I raise that could maximize my return in the future? Now, there is no, I mean to say, black or white answer to this. Okay, it also depends on what kind of company you are. If you are a, let's say, virtual preclinical company versus clinical stage company, if you're a product company versus platform based, the strategy has to be different. Okay, but conceptually, you should be raising the minimum amount of capital that allows you to move to the next inflection point. Okay, why? Because if you reach the next inflection point, you could be able to raise the next round, at a better valuation. Okay, instead of raising a large amount of money at the same valuation at the beginning. Okay, because what happens is that once you have the inflection point, your cost of capital also kind of reduces, right? So if you keep raising money at a very large, very high cost of capital, okay, your value per share at the end when you exit, or you provide exit to the investors, versus a company who has raised very strategically at inflection point will be completely different. Now, I don't want to say that only equity capital, you should be raising it, to maximize value per share. In fact, it is very important to combine this equity capital, which is a dilutive money, with non-dilutive investments. Now, you could do, for example, if you are a very early stage company, you could use grants, or let's say some favorable soft loans as well. Okay, as long as it gives you, enough bandwidth to return the money in long periods of time. If you are, for example, okay, another excellent way of non-dilutive funding is partnership, right, with a pharmaceutical company. Of course, for that, you need to have, certain advanced stages. But the point is that even partnership with the pharmaceutical companies, you should be careful that the non-dilutive money that you're getting it, okay, it's not that you should be partnering very early, because if you partner very early, you'll be giving up a lot of value early. For example, if you're a single product company, I think the strategy shouldn't be to partner too early, because that way, you're giving up, a lot of value to pharmaceutical companies early, right? If you're a platform-based company, you could kind of partner early, for example, for one asset, okay, that gives you enough upfront fee or non-dilutive money to take that particular concept, let's say product further. So imagine a company who has raised, let's say, 8 million or 10 million in VC funding. It has kind of combined this dilutive funding with a partnership with let's say, pharmaceutical company. I think that's a great start to maximize, value per share in the future. Okay, so to summarize these two concepts, I think first of all, it is important that when you are the CEO of the company, your objective should be to maximize the value per share. Okay, and how you can do that? You can do that with being very capital efficient. Okay. And gone are the days of 80s or 90s, right? Where if you have abundant capital and if everybody is giving you enough capital, your objective was that, okay, you take as much money as you can. Okay. Now that concept is not in fashion. Okay, and it's very intuitive and easy to understand, right? So today, if somebody, imagine you would need only 20 million, but because of your attractive asset, somebody or investors are ready to give you 80 million, for example. Should you take it? Now, having the objective of maximizing value per share and being capital efficient, you should be and take into account whether you are a product company, platform company, or different kinds of depending on your situation. You should take the right decision at that point of time. Okay. Even it happens with IPO, for example. If you are going IPO, you need 40 million, but you're oversubscribed and you raise 60 million at the same price. You are diluting it severely. Okay, so it is very important. This part plays a very important role in the value creation in the future. I would also like to talk a little bit. I have 6 more minutes, I see, and a little bit about risk. How you can manage the risk that could also lead to value creation. It is very important that investors try to ensure that the next new dollar that you invest at a lower risk. Now that seems very counterintuitive. Why? Because as we move forward, our scientific risk starts decreasing, but our financial risk moves up. Okay, so now how can you manage those risks? So now we have several risks right now we are talking about. One is scientific risk, one is financial risk, one is commercial risk. If you're talking about commercial risk, I think there shouldn't be any loophole in commercial risk, no matter you are supposed to be launched 8 years down the line. But if investor sees that there is even a small problem in the commercial risk, I don't think you will be able to raise money. That's the first basic fundamental point. In terms of managing the scientific risk, okay, the way you could manage is to have your hypothesis tested at a reasonable cost before you get into the next phase. What I mean by that is, for example, let's take the example of this company Stromedics. Okay, so there was this antibody STX100 which Biogen was planning to they wanted to basically tease out phase 2 data so that they didn't have to invest in expensive phase 3 trials. And as they were not able to do that, so they licensed to a company called Stromedics. So what these guys did, that they understood that the clinical hypothesis, that this antibody slows the progression of the disease, it's very difficult to prove. So they worked on their biological hypothesis that what if this antibody attenuates TGF-beta signaling activity in lungs, and if they can do at 1/10 of the cost, okay, then here you are, right? So, and that's what they did. And they were successfully acquired by Biogen. It's another story that after that in phase 2, Biogen had to kind of stop the trials because of the safety issue. But as you know, the value chain in the life sciences is fragmented. So we always focus on that particular fragment of the value chain and see how we can de-risk ourselves. In terms of financing risk, what I would like to quote one very interesting point made by one VC in one of our events that we organized here. Was there are 2 companies, A and B. Company A has a superior product. Company B has an average product, but company B gets funded. Company A does not. It is a very, very important point because many of the biotech companies also fail because they don't get properly funded. Okay, it's not only because it's not you might not be getting funded in the beginning, but there might be a chances that you're not very agile enough to raise the money or spend a lot of time in investors relations. That might also lead to not able to raise money. For example, one of my clients asked that, okay, I'm planning to do an IPO of 40 million. How much money I should be raising before that? So the way you view the risk is that what happens if IPO does not happen because of a certain macro condition which is not under your control, for example, right? Do you have sufficient amount of money to move forward for another 6 months or 1 year down the line? So you must be taking into account that particular factor in order to raise money. So as you could see, there are several ways in which you can manage risk. And if you are able to manage risk well, that means that you'd be able to take more risk. And as you get adapted to taking more risk, you might be able to create more value as well, right? So To summarize in 15 minutes, I think I'm almost done, is maximizing value per share, combining dilutive and non-dilutive funding, managing capital efficiency, which is very, very important, and managing the risk of the company, both scientifically, financially, commercially, will allow you to create value. It's a process, but if you focus on all these aspects, I'm sure you'll be able to give better returns for all shareholders and all stakeholders as well, right? Thank you very much. And if you have any question, I'm very happy to kind of take over.